Hi, I'm Jonathan Demme. This is John Schaefer.
I thought it was my job to give the introductions. You know, one of the funny things about putting music on the radio is you never know who's listening, and you never know what they're actually hearing. Because every time, I guarantee, every time you put any piece of music on the radio, you have some people saying, "What is this crap?" and turning the radio off. And then you have someone else who's having a religious experience. A couple of years ago, I played some of Enzo Avitabile's music on WNYC. You, Jonathan, were listening. What were you hearing?
Yeah, the circumstances were really good too, because I was in my car at night. It was the 11 o'clock edition of New Sounds, and I was driving on the West Side Highway, and the George Washington Bridge was there, and this great music came on. And it scored life so spectacularly at that moment.
Well, but enough that you went to Naples to meet this guy and to see if there really was something there.
Yeah, right.
And apparently there was.
In fact, that's a good moment to acknowledge the two wonderful producers of this film, Davide Aziolini and we'll stand up, and Antonio Monda, New York's own Antonio Monda. These guys put on a terrific film festival in Naples, and I was invited a couple of years after hearing Enzo on your show, went over and mentioned my excitement about it, and I got the kind of phone call a filmmaker dreams of getting. We have financing for a portrait film of Enzo Avitabile if you'd like to do that. So I was off and running. We went for a week. It spent about exactly a year ago. And just spent a week. I wanted to put the ball in Enzo's court. I said, take us to where you want to take us, and hopefully please play a lot of music. And he said, okay, I'm going to invite some of my favorite musicians from around the world, as well as the deep-rooted Italian Neapolitan musicians and composers. And that's what happened. I didn't know what was going to happen day by day. We just picked him up and went somewhere and wound up with this.
What was the story you were hoping to tell?
Well, yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think that, I found Enzo so enormously likable when I met him, and he felt to me like a kind of a deep person. And as I'd done my research and found out what he was singing about, things that we all consider to be very important, I felt that if we could do a film that had lots of him expressing himself through music, and if we could get a taste of the Naples he loves, then we'll wind up with a portrait of this guy. I had no idea. I mean, I think he's slightly mad, isn't he? Because with his obsession with making the books of the scales and the 600 composed things that no one will ever hear, and all this stuff. And I love that thing. By the way, I wanted to ask you. Enzo does kind of a rundown of the history of jazz. Does that track with your vision of the evolution of jazz?
Well, it does, actually. I mean, as a sax player, he's gravitating towards the people you would expect, although then, notably, he then veers off the mainstream, and you hear him mentioning people like Sam Rivers, So Enzo is, he's got his ear clearly, off the beaten paths, and taking you down some pretty unusual paths.
I just love this combination. His wild embrace of music and people from other lands and other cultures, and also his endless digging deep into the history, and coming up with people like Luigi Lai. I just can't believe, and the diversity of his sound I think is so great. I hope that what comes across, we used to have more information, as in our editing, we wanted to pull stuff we wanted to keep the essential story of him, and hope that the music again could carry the day, and also that we would just get the fact that this is a portrait of someone who was born into lower income situations, who worked his ass off with his instruments, had such a gift that he wound up being able to attend a conservatory, and very young, wound up on stage with James Brown and Richie Havens and people like that. It's kind of an amazing arc.
it's notable in several instances in the film where things are mentioned but not explained. So that was, you're saying that was intentional?
That was intentional, yeah.
So Botari, for example, which is the name of the band that you and I first heard.
Yes.
Where he's using these almost 900-year-old South Italian rhythms and farming implements being used as percussion and stuff.
And we love Botari, and the thing is that in John Turturro's terrific movie Passione,
also about Naples.
It's also about Naples, and Enzo is in that film with Botari.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't make a great deal of sense to me to sort of include them once again with all the other diversity.
So letting us see the process of the filmmaking is another decision that you had to make pretty early in the game, I'm guessing.
Well, it's something that, because the rule is, in theory, what you hear is, while you're becoming a filmmaker is, you never want to see the equipment. You can't see the other people on the crew. You can't see the equipment. You have to make the viewer feel like, it's an absurd thing when you stop and start to think about it, to make people feel like they're not watching a film that was made. And I sort of feel like in doing documentaries, the presence of cameras and the presence of a crew is part of the reality there. So I just quit worrying about that. And like I loved watching Enzo, our brilliant Italian cameraman, and Charlie Libben. I love watching them scamper around in front of Enzo doing in saxophone in the street, and it kind of like I like to think that in a way we become part of the music for a minute. That we're really in sync with these musicians. And for someone who doesn't play any instruments like me, it's as close as I can ever get to feeling like a musician.
Part of the band.
Yeah, it's important to Enzo to be rooted in Naples. He likes that about himself. He gains strength from being there. And seeing that continuum. But that's a very nice pad, by the way.
Yeah. Well, he's clearly in love with his equipment.
Oh my God, I know.
It's funny to see a guy who's been around as long as he has be such a nerd about his computer and his keyboard and stuff. I mean, there's like a real kind of, and you can't fake that stuff either. There's a real kind of joy in his musical obsession.
Yeah, his enthusiasm knows no bounds whatsoever. And I love how he just happens to, and I hope that's a nice thing about the film, that as it progresses, oh, he can play that too. Oh, he can do that too. He's so very excellent in so many ways.
And so many different kinds of music. Now, we know him as a world music person. So when he brings in the leading player of the Armenian duduk in the world, Jivan Gasparian, or brings in the greatest living composer from Iran in Hossein Alizadeh, or one of the most versatile and brilliant percussionists in the world in Trilha Kurtu, that's amazing, but it's not surprising. To see him with a full symphony orchestra, with the great classical pianist Bruno Canino, I mean, it's just like, is there any kind of music pictures of him with Africa Bambaataa?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy seems to have done and played it all with everybody. I had never seen the arpetta before this film. Explain what the arpetta, it's the little thing that Enzo plays.
Yeah, that's Enzo describes that as being, that's the world's smallest harp. It falls into the harp category. And it's, again, from ancient times. And in Enzo's research, he came across this notion and found the information on it and had one. He participated in the building of the one we see. Yeah, it's funny. What a beautiful sound that is, too. It's just...
It's a simple instrument. It's got 6 strings, and because it's in the harp family, you don't stop them. You can't change it. So he's got 6 notes to play with, which seems like it should be really limiting, but not to him, apparently.
Yeah. The moment comes with all films, especially documentaries, okay, so how are we going to end this? And we tried a lot of different things, and the Dobby song, well, all of those songs, wherever you put, we had endless different configurations, and we settled into that one, and Dobby was earlier because he had come in earlier. And that song, more than any, seemed to express the best, the themes that Enzo holds the dearest. And Dobby's such an extraordinary superstar in a group of superstars. It just really felt like the way to go.
Well, on the air yesterday on Soundcheck, I said that the film was simply titled Enzo Avitabile Music Life. Turns out it's not such a simple title after all, but it really, you know, like that instrument, simple on the surface, but with real depths to it. And Jonathan, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. And John, thank you so much for coming and doing this. Thank you so much.